Hello and welcome to Piece of Pod, a podcast brought to you by South Coast law firm Warner Goodman. I'm Sarah Whitemore. I'm an employment lawyer and senior partner in the firm with over 30 years of experience. In this podcast, I'll be having conversations with law firm partners, business owners, clients and other contacts of mine, and we'll be engaging in conversations about running businesses, career journeys, and how to excel in the world of work. So if that's of interest, why not grab yourself a cuppa, get yourself comfortable, and let's dive in. My guest today is Kay Coombes. She's one half the double act that owns and manages an HR consultancy called Peas in a Pod, not to be confused with Peace in a Pod, which is, of course, this podcast. Your LinkedIn profile tells me that you co-founded Peas in a Pod Consulting with Rebecca Beard, who will be appearing on a later episode, and that your consultancy is built on a 20-year friendship driven by your shared mission, which is to redefine people support in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to explore all that in this episode. So welcome, Kay. Thank you for joining us. First things first, if you've listened to the podcast before, you know I'll always start with your career journey. So where did it all begin? What was your first job and what did you want to be when you left school?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So it's a bit of a funny tale really, because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Right from a child, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. Got all the way through to finishing college and signed up to a university degree to enable me to do that. And then realised in panic that I didn't want to do it. And I got my A-level results and realised I had an A in business studies, so I should probably just go to business school. So I signed up through clearing to University of Portsmouth for a degree in business studies and then dropped out a year later.
Oh, goodness me.
So I've had, as an early start, kind of real confusion over where I wanted to be, and ended up as a careers advisor as a result, which was kind of ironic. But I loved it. We started, Rebecca and I, on the first day of a job under the government's New Deal for Disabled People programme, working for a company called West Country Training. And that's how we met. And so I came into this having recently dropped out of university, had a sort of light career working as an assistant manager in retail, but really was just searching for something that meant something at that point. Whereas Rebecca has a slightly different story, which was very deliberate and intentional that I won't spoil because I'm sure you'll ask her the same question. But we kind of fell into this situation where we were working on a scheme in jobs that we'd never worked in before. So I never had a definitive plan, or I did, and it went out the window. And then from there, really worked our way up into senior operational management roles. I very much stayed in the voluntary community and social enterprise sector. I love it. I love impact-driven work and purpose or cause-driven organisations. And I worked very much on helping people develop in the workplace and coaching. I used to jump at the chance to run the team away days. And then, one day Rebecca asked me, do you want to start this business together in a field that we've never worked in before? And I thought, why not?
And that's where it all began.
Exactly.
So looking back then, you had two sort of career thoughts to start with. One you didn't explore further, one you went off to university and then didn't see through to the end. I'm a similar story in that I went to university twice. First time I went, didn't work for me. But do you have any sort of lingering regrets about that, or any sort of desire to have gone back and done your university course? Or
Yeah, for sure. Definitely at the beginning of my career, I think there was probably 20 years ago still a bit of a stigma around dropping out university. And I kept thinking I should go back. I must go back. I should. And I should go and do it. And I should finish what I started. And in my family, degree education was really, really important. So I was the first person to drop out. And my parents were really supportive. They didn't want me doing something that wasn't for me. But as I've continued in my career, I've done a lot of continuous professional development. I've done lots of courses and accreditations and certifications, and I enjoy that learning space so much more. So I think I've probably finally got to a place in my life over the last 5 or 10 years where actually I think the story of me dropping out is quite important in terms of a formative path that's different to the one everybody expected me to travel. And as a result, I tell it with pride. We're now entrepreneurs in residence at the Portsmouth University, and go to several events, we speak at events, and often I will tell people that I dropped out, not because I'm necessarily proud of not finishing what I started, but because it wasn't right for me, and I knew it wasn't right for me, and I've gone a different way about it, and I'm still really proud of where I've got to as a result. So I don't think I ever will go back now.
No. So a lot of the audience that we have are sort of aspiring lawyers, aspiring business people, people who are at the start of their career journeys. And I also tell the story of dropping out of university because I think it's an important one. That back then it was very much you go or you don't go.
Yeah.
And you either go and make a success of it, or you're considered to have been, failed at it or whatever. Now I think people have a lot more choices, and they can craft their career as they progress, and they can go back and do university and so on. I think there's much more fluidity around education now. I don't know if that's something you would agree.
Absolutely, 100%. I think if you want to go to university and you need it for your chosen field, and it's something that you're really passionate about, I think more power to you. Go and do it and finish it. And I think if there are other ways to go about achieving what it is you want to achieve, then do those. I think it's we're so fortunate to have that choice now. I don't think the stigma's the same. I think university is really expensive as an option as well, unless you're really going to need it for what it is you want to go into. There's just always more than one path to travel to get where you want to go. I think it's more about staying true to what you want and who you are, and knowing that actually I can put myself through another 2 or 3 years of this, but I don't know that at the end of it I'm going to be any happier, or it's going to get me where I want to go. And I got to a point where I just couldn't go to another economics lecture, to be honest.
And a lot of people these days go through the apprenticeship route. We certainly find that coming into the law. We've got apprentice solicitors, that sort of thing within the business. And there isn't that need to have the £50,000 debt or however much it is these days. And the sort of education they get through an apprenticeship sometimes is more appropriate to the jobs they're going to do at the end, or it's more appropriate to the business that they're working in. And we find it quite a valuable way of bringing people on into the business. So I think there's certainly lots of different opportunities.
Absolutely.
Running your own business, presumably there have been challenges, but I wonder if that 20-year friendship caused any challenges. It's something I'm interested in.
Absolutely.
And again, I will be asking Rebecca later. So
yes, absolutely. I think it was both the best and most difficult thing, looking back over the last 9-year journey of Peas in a Pod Consulting. I think that what it did was, when we're looking at what makes teams work, which is an area that I really enjoy getting into with the businesses we work with, we know that the foundation that people have to have in order for teams, whether it's a duo or whether it's more people, is trust. And that was just a given for us. So we were lucky. We almost fast-tracked that first kind of step towards a successful partnership. The trust was just unspoken and implicitly there from the beginning, which meant that we could have really heated and meaningful and meaty debates and discussions around how we wanted this business to look, who we wanted to serve, how we wanted it to be shaped, what the growth strategy was going to look like. And I say strategy in real loose terms because it was a bit of the back of the old fag packet, if I'm honest. But yeah, we were able to have those conflicts, and we're very different people at our core. So I'm very much the kind of fluffy pink. I want people to develop and be happy, and I want to coach, and I want to develop great healthy cultures. And Rebecca wants all those things too. But as you will see, she's very different from me, and I won't speak on her behalf. But she's very much, she's got that legal mind. She's got those that evidence. She's not afraid to ruffle a few feathers, and I think having both of those sides has been one of the most important things about our relationships. But it does obviously cause very different perspectives to bubble up, and quite heated conversations. But fortunately, we've always had a commitment to managing conflict in the same way we manage everything, which is the friendship comes first. And as long as that relationship is solid, then the team around us, the clients around us, the business around us will always be solid too.
And so do the two of you take different tasks for clients? Do you have different things that you do? How does it work in practice?
Yes, absolutely. Kind of, to put it really broadly, I'm the queen of culture and she's the queen of compliance. That's probably the easiest way to sum it up. So I'm looking at all of the proactive steps that we can put in place to help leaders and managers develop their teams in a really proactive way, looking at culture, looking at vision, mission, values, helping organisations really understand their purpose, communicate it, looking at change, looking at communication, looking at performance optimization. And I say that deliberately because Rebecca's going to talk about performance management. So how to get someone from good to great, how to coach someone to progress, to be promoted, to help people set career paths, help people understand what engages and drives performance within their teams. So that's all the stuff that I will focus on. And when you say HR, you probably think more about the side of the business that Rebecca looks at, which is the compliance. And I'll leave her to talk more on that, but making sure that all of the right compliance is in place, that things are managed properly, and coming along and helping when things get sticky, which they inevitably do when you're working with people.
I'm fascinated by your side of it, though, because my experience is probably more aligned with Rebecca's. So I'm very much involved in people coming to me and talking to me when things go wrong, whether it's a disciplinary or performance or whatever it is. And I'm reminded of some clients that I worked with in my early days as a trainee solicitor who were a travel company. And we dealt with all their complaints. So we dealt with all the claims that related to dodgy holidays, things that had gone wrong, whatever. And at the time I thought, I am never going on holiday with this company because everything is a disaster. But of course, we were only seeing that one aspect of their business, and probably a very small percentage of the people who are actually experiencing holidays with that particular company. And it's similar with the work that I do. I'm only seeing the negative side of things. I don't get to see the lovely holiday side of things, which is kind of where you are in the business. So lots of businesses talk about culture. And what really does that mean in practice?
It's really simple, and I follow the work and always have done of Simon Sinek, and he describes it really easily as culture is values plus behaviour. So it is what you value as an organisation, being really intentional about that, understanding it, defining it, because you can't ever develop something if you haven't defined it. So defining what's important, what you value as an organisation, and what you want your employees to value similarly. And then behaviour, how people show up in line with those values and come to work, and how they behave on a day-to-day basis, what their practices are, what the rituals are that make you who you are as an organisation, and then making sure that you're communicating it, role modelling it, you're leading towards it, you're hiring to it, you're firing to it, you're coaching to it. And just being really clear about who you are. Your culture is who your organisation is at their natural best. It exists whether you define it or not. You'll feel it the minute you walk into a restaurant or any business of any kind. I call it magic dust, because you know whether the culture is one that makes you feel happy and valued as a customer, or whether it's somewhere that you probably don't want to spend too long. And you'll feel it through every interaction and all of the intangible stuff that goes on around you.
And is it something that's really aimed at super big organisations with lots of money and structures and so on, or can small businesses get involved in improving culture as well?
Absolutely, small businesses, and we would say from day one. So even if you are just one person who has launched a business, it's about separating that business from you as an individual. You might be the person who's driving it, or for us, there's two of us driving it. But we were told really early on, and it was such a good piece of advice, that you need to see your business as another person that exists entirely independently of you. And as a result, having an idea that this is an entity with its own identity makes it a little bit easier to, one, detach from it, but two, bring others into it. So even if you are a sole trader, it's worth thinking, why have I started this business? What made me decide that I had to do it, that I could do it better than everyone else if you've got competitors? And what do I want to stand for? Why do I exist? What do I want to stand for? And that's your values, essentially. And it need only be 2, 3, 4 things. If you value everything, you really value nothing. So we want to be really clear about the things that we value. And then we use that as a framework to guide all of our decision makings. And that will include your first hire. So you'll know if you go into a big business because they'll have their values plastered all over the wall. They've probably got it on their website. But you'll know if they're actually authentic by the interactions that you're having. And all you have to do is go and talk to a staff member and say, what are your values here? And if they can't tell you, then they've spent a lot of money on this stuff, but actually they haven't embedded it or role modeled it or led towards it. So absolutely, from the minute you start your business, it has its own identity, and that identity needs values so that you can grow.
And so if you go into a business, you can suss out what's going on with the culture, can you? What are the kind of key indicators that somewhere's got a really healthy, good culture, in your opinion?
Well, I walked in here today, and the first thing somebody did was greet me with a smile and offered me a drink. So I thought, they're concerned for my well-being. It's bright, it's light, it's well kept, it's well decorated. You came down, you introduced every single member of their team. It didn't matter what role they did. It didn't matter who was more senior. It was everybody came. Everybody that's had any interactions with our business came and introduced themselves. We had some nice small talk. It felt conversational. It felt warm. It felt light. It felt friendly. So on a first impression, you can tell what a business stands for. Similarly, if you walk into a place with a really bad culture, maybe they'll keep their eyes down, or they'll answer the call and maybe put their hand up. And you can tell what they value without them saying a single word. If we're going into larger businesses, I will ask an employee what the values are, and if they can't tell me, I know that they're not that important to them. But if I see people gossiping in the corner, or if I speak to somebody when we're doing some discovery work and they're talking about each other in a negative light, then I can see what the culture is and I can see what they value. So you might have a big word on the wall that says we value excellence, but if the place is a mess and people aren't greeting you nicely when you come in and you haven't been offered a drink and there's complaints stacking up all over the place, then that's not what we value.
Yeah. So what would you say is the biggest mistake businesses make then when they're trying to align culture with strategy?
When you're trying to align culture with strategy, there's two different paths. I like to almost keep them separately. When you're trying to drive results, you have a driving path, which is what we're doing, and I see that as the roadmap. So when you're looking at your strategy, your objectives, your business goals, right down to your individual activities that you perform on a day-to-day basis, that driving path is a roadmap that you want to share with employees at an appropriate level. So they might not need to see the whole map, but they need to understand the little bit they play in helping the organisation go where it needs to go in terms of what they're doing. The guiding path is your values. So your values, your behaviours, your practices, and the way you show up at work is the guiding path. And that's almost sort of the compass that helps you on your roadmap. And if you can, it's a really simple framework, but if you can bear those two things in mind, they should stem from your whole organisational purpose. So we know why we exist, we know what we're doing on our driving path, and we know how we're going to do it with our guiding path. And if we focus intentionally on that at every level, and really the leadership is the key here, so that's where we always like to start, then you're going to drive the results you want to see. Because not only will people be doing what they should be doing, and in the right roles, in the right places, doing the right things at the right time, which is productivity, they're going to be showing up in the right way for each other and holding the organisation up for what it should stand for. So you get the results you want.
And the world of work has gone through radical change, hasn't it? In the last 5 years, post-COVID, we've gone from office-based or site-based or factory-based working to a large proportion of people went home working, and then now we've got this kind of hybrid working. How does that all impact on the sort of culture of a business and its performance?
It makes it so much harder. It does. And I don't think we can get away from it. I think, for me to sit here and say, it would be, it's just as easy. There's a lot of what you need to do to embed a set of values and behaviours that will be similar in a remote environment from an office environment, but proximity isn't there. So you have to be so much more intentional with everything that you're doing. You have to be so much more visible with everything that you're doing, because you won't naturally just bump into each other. We're not going to be perhaps sharing meetings in quite the same way. We're going to miss out on those dynamics of being in the same space at the same time. So when we're looking at how a company is going to embed values, once we've got values in place, and sometimes that's the first job. They might have values that they're not really sticking to. They might have values that don't mean anything. So the first thing is to go in and look at those values and how they're working for the organisation. But once we've got a set of values, and actually, in some ways for me, it doesn't really matter what they are, because they all lead back to the same thing. When you really pick them apart, you don't, that's why you almost don't need any more than 3 or 4, because they all become quite umbrella in their way of being. So once they're set, it's about looking at how you're embedding them in the organisation. And that might be in your job descriptions, in your adverts. It might be you're mentioning it in the hiring process. It might be that we're writing your performance review frameworks with your values at their heart. You might do values awards to recognise specific behaviours or specific practices that really demonstrate values in action. It might be that you use the opportunities where you do meet up to do treasure hunts around the values. We've seen it all. We've had Christmas trees around the values. We've had people doing kind of little craft projects around the values. It's just being really intentional about where those opportunities are in a remote environment that's different in an office environment, and being that bit more intentional around weaving them into everyday work and practices.
And the values and culture that you're talking about, does that evolve through the life cycle of a business? You know, you've been in business, you're saying 9 years now. What your values were at the outset, will they still be the same now, or does it all evolve?
It does definitely evolve. I think when we first started, we had shared values of myself and Rebecca based on this 20-year friendship. We knew that we had certain values, because regardless of how big you get, the goal isn't to do business with everyone or to employ everyone. It's to do business with people who believe what you believe and who align to your values framework. Because if they don't, it becomes really obvious. They'll stick out, and they should. We should not want to hire people who don't fit our values framework. We should want to encourage them to go and work somewhere else where the values align better. So at the beginning, they were almost unspoken. So we didn't do the piece of work we tell everyone to do now because we were sort of throwing ourselves into this journey, but we knew that there were certain values that we shared. So integrity was a big one for us. Fairness is a huge one for both of us. If things are unfair, we get quite cross about it. And as we started to employ a team, we realised that we needed to put these into our own framework to be able to support our employees, to understand what's important to us, to be able to do that performance optimization and improvement piece that we talk about so often. And actually, when it comes to values, you'll get the traditional ones that I'm mentioning, like integrity and fairness and innovation and all of these things. But actually, what we're looking for is something that feels a lot more personal. So in the pod, we have values like lead, full stop, no power plays, real from the get-go. And these values mean something to our employees. So when we talk about real from the get-go, for us, that's similar to integrity. It's about showing up when we say we're going to show up, being who we are, not pretending to be anyone else, doing the right thing. The same with no power plays. It would be really easy in our field of work to say to people, especially in Rebecca's side, I told you so. Often we give advice and it gets ignored because people do think that they know better, and that's fine. It's their business. It's their baby. We'll respect that. But it'd be really easy when they come back and say, you know what you said was going to happen? It happened, and this person isn't performing just because I moved their office, or they're not performing just because we kept ignoring the conversation, we didn't have it, and as a result, I'm more in a sticky situation than I was last time I spoke to you. Really easy to power play that, but we don't want any of our team to do that. We want to make it really easy for people to come back to us and say, okay, I'm going to do what you said I should do the first time. So our values aren't the same as when we started. They have evolved. We've wrapped a language around them, but what's most important when you have values is not just about what the value is, no power plays. It's about giving it some sort of life-giving statement afterwards that explain to people what the behaviours are that underpin that value. And that's what you need to be doing in every conversation you have with an employee. And when things go wrong, which Rebecca will come to talk about.
And similarly, do we need to evolve as each generation joins the organisation? I'm thinking now of Gen Z coming into the workplace and the very Gen Z qualities that we all see. Do we need to change our values and cultures to accommodate them, or do we need them to come on board with our values? What do you think?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think there will be things that are inherently part of the organisation and important, but as I say, they do evolve and they do almost feed into similar things. If culture is who we are at our natural best, who we are at our natural best will shift when our teams change and evolve. And if we are embedding these values really well, then they should feel like they belong to the team. They don't belong to the leadership. They don't belong to the person who started the business. They might have come up with the first set. But actually, we should be reviewing and looking at our values every strategy day and making sure they still feel right for us. And as the generations mix and shift, there's going to be some different perspectives on what is most important. And we see it when we look at, the Randstad report and things like that. We know that right now, salary isn't the biggest driver of people's engagement in work. It is flexibility. And I think that does come from Gen Z. I think there's a huge focus not only on their own personal well-being, but also the well-being of the planet. So people and planet. So it might be that the focus and the value shifts slightly to be more geared towards some of those things that are really important to that generation. So it should feel like the whole framework should feel like it belongs to the people and to the organisation, and that they are guardians of those values, and they should be calling each other out when they're not meeting them. That's where we want to get to. We see that it takes about a year of intentional work, maybe a bit shorter, but we want to get to the point where an employee is calling out another employee for not showing up in line with the values. And a great example we had of that was a company we worked with who had the value, we've got your back. And one employee would say to the other one, look, I was doing this drop off, or I was doing this delivery, and you weren't there at the other end to meet it, or I was really struggling and you didn't have my back. That we don't want it just to sit with leadership. We want it to really feel like it belongs to everybody.
Excellent. That sounds amazing. And so what sort of work do you do with businesses to help them on all of this stuff?
Usually I come in fairly early on after an audit when Rebecca leads on all the discovery work that we do with our clients, and it becomes really apparent really quickly if there are some gaps in this area. So for me, if you can work with senior leadership teams or directors or individuals in a business at management level, then you can affect so much around HR. So just by starting at that top level and getting people to shift their mindset, their leadership mindset, to understand who they are as leaders. So for me, it starts with coming and talking to a senior leadership team or a manager, if there's only a couple of managers in the business, and we work with organisations of all shapes and sizes, and understanding what their leadership looks like. And as part of that, I will inevitably uncover stuff around the guiding path and the driving path. So oftentimes we find that there is no strategy of any kind in place. And when I say strategy, I'm not talking about a 20-page document. I'm talking about maybe 4 or 5 things that are absolutely really important that the organisation needs to achieve. And there is no values framework, or there is one and it's not really fit for purpose. So the first thing that I will do is come in and spend a few mornings with a senior leadership group or a couple of managers to understand what is most important to you, what's the roadmap for the business, and I will also want to understand what matters to you in terms of a culture and who you want to work with. And we'll know if there are problems already from the audit, so we'll know if there are disgruntled employees. We'll know if people aren't clear as to where the business is headed. We'll understand if there's conflict. We'll know if the leadership's not aligned with the executive leadership, or if the business owner's got disenfranchised. And my role is to spend a chunk of time, sometimes in as little as 3 mornings, with those people to bottom that out and to start to turn it around, to get them to shift into a different way of thinking and take some responsibility for turning the organisation around.
And do you often find that businesses have the same sort of values as you, or do you have to sometimes work with businesses and you think, oh, well, that's not really my values?
We're 9 years down the line, we can be quite choosy. So if we feel that an organisation is paying lip service to this and they don't necessarily want to really and authentically support their leaders to lead the organisation, or to make sure that their employees are considered and that they are creating great places to work, accountable places to work that drive results, but great places to work nonetheless, then we'll spot that quite early, and that doesn't feed into our why, which is to redefine HR. We want to be able to really stay true to who we are as an organisation. And so we have parted company with clients on that basis before. And it may not become apparent until we've done a couple of these sessions with them, but it will inevitably, and we're real from the get-go. So we're going to have that conversation with them and say, we're not sure we can actually make any impact in this organisation. Here's why. Maybe we should find you a HR provider that's going to do some of the stuff that you want them to do, that has the same values as you, which might be, let's just make sure that every time I mess up, for one of example, someone's there to clean up behind me. If that's what someone wants, that's great, but that's not what we're going to do with them.
And if a business owner is listening to this thinking, well, I need to improve my company culture, what's the first thing they should do?
I think the first thing that they should do is talk to people about how they experience the culture. If they have employees, even just a handful of them, ask them how they would define the culture. I would then see what they have to say, sit down and think about that phrase, our culture is who we are at our natural best. If we are at our natural best, what is happening? Are people showing up and working together? Are we coming up with new ideas? Are we valuing our customers before everything else? And then just start writing it down. Write down what it is that's most important to you, but then think about not only what you're coming up with, how are you going to embed it in every single day? How are you going to make sure it shows up in every practice, every conversation that you're having with your people? And come up with not just what's important, but how you're going to weave it in day to day, and get your team involved.
And all of this sounds hugely expensive, but presumably the whole idea is that actually, if you've got a good culture, you've got a good set of values, then your performance improves. It's all about improving productivity and profitability, I guess.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. It doesn't need to be expensive. We are a small organisation. As I mentioned, it can be 3 mornings. It can be 3 mornings of getting people to think differently, and then telling people how to take it forward from there for themselves. If you've got managers and leaders in their organisation, I'm coming in with the expectation that they're going to lead. And if they can't, then we've got a slightly different conversation to have, and I'll leave that for Rebecca to cover with you. But I'm going to go on the basis that if you have leadership at any level, or someone with a title manager at the end of their job, then they're going to want to be involved with this and manage against it. And we have to help them upskill to be able to do that. So it doesn't necessarily need to be too tricky or too expensive. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
It was all about the fact that it's about improving performance and productivity, yes. And presumably it pays for itself, I guess.
Yes, absolutely that. So we're looking at the main drivers of employee engagement here, which is a sense that their well-being matters, that they're part of something bigger than themselves, that they're able to make a contribution and to influence decision-making, that they're paid fairly for the work that they do, that they can make healthy connections with people. And depending on how people are motivated, I do a lot of work around motivational mapping and understanding what's driving people at work. Those things will be important to different levels. But if we work on the basis that we are meeting those needs, then they will drive engagement. And we know that engaged employees are more productive than disengaged employees. We know the costs that disengaged employees cost small business owners, and it is not to be underestimated. So yeah, ultimately this comes down to a return on investment. If we can get this right and we can get people behaving in the right way in the organisation and really engaged and really committed, then you're going to make more money off of the people that you've employed to grow your business, and leave you as a leader with more time to do the fun stuff that you want to do, which is ultimately going out and taking over the world.
Yeah. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom for the audience? Anything you'd like to say that might encourage them? Top tips to share, maybe?
I think probably the main thing is don't undervalue it, this sort of work. I think even myself and Rebecca in the early stages of our journey, it was, it's obvious a HR company cannot survive without a compliance team, and they are phenomenal, our compliance team. I think there are some business owners that may be sceptical about the value of this stuff in terms of the real value, sort of as we talked about the return on investment. But we've seen a lot of companies really turn this around and create much happier places for people to come to work, and it spreads like magic dust. Once the employees are happy, they have direct contact with your stakeholders, your suppliers, your customers, most importantly, and that magic dust will transfer, and that will help you grow the business. So we all know when we've gone into an organisation or a business where someone's not been happy, and our likelihood of wanting to go back as a result. So yeah, and it's not too difficult.
And I guess the thing is, with the side of the business that you're working in, positivity breeds positivity. So it kind of spirals upwards if you start getting involved and start getting engaged. I suspect if you focus entirely on Rebecca's side of things, then possibly things do also go in a negative way if you start to sort of be addressing things negatively. Well, not addressing it negatively, but addressing the negativities that are there.
Yeah.
And it's about a balance, isn't it, I think, between the two of you and an organisation.
And you'll see from what Rebecca has to say in the next episode that actually, although we kind of badge it as proactive versus reactive, our compliance team do compliance through the lens of a proactive approach, which I think is what sets us apart, because it isn't an either-or situation. There's a bit in the middle where we all meet, which is around the balance of empowerment and accountability. So yeah, it can be both. But absolutely, if you were just, it's carrot and stick, isn't it? If you were just using the stick, it wouldn't be the same.
So we've got to that point in the podcast where we have the audience-sourced question.
Okay.
So your question, Kay, is in this envelope here.
Oh my goodness, right, okay. How exciting. Oh, it's actually a little bit paper. Let's have a look. Right. If you could change one thing about your career journey, would you? If so, what would it be? I don't think I would change anything. I think if there was one thing that could be different, it's that all of the people who told Rebecca and I to set up our business 20 and a bit years ago were right, and we probably could have done it earlier. But I still think that we did it at the right time for us, and we've had an amazing journey together, so I wouldn't really change anything, but maybe do it sooner. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, I love that. So a positive note to end on, and hopefully Rebecca will start her episode saying something much the same. So it's been lovely chatting to you, Kay, and we'll continue the conversation offline, but thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. I hope you found it insightful and empowering. To stay connected, why not hit the subscribe button? Or if you think your friends might be interested, why not rate us as a 5? To be first to know about upcoming episodes, follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram and LinkedIn, where you'll find us at Warner Goodman LLP, or follow us on YouTube, where our episodes are at Piece of Pod. Thank you again. Until next time.